There you go.
Okay, yeah. We've already talked about how to prevent smoke alarms from going off, so I'm good to go.
Yeah, take it down.
Yep.
Hi, everybody. I'm Julia Collin Davison.
And my name is Lan Lamb, and we're here with another edition of Ask ATK.
That's right. Happy January. Happy January, Lan.
Happy January. How's it going?
Good. How are you?
Hanging in there. Hanging in there.
Yeah. We have a lot of great questions today.
We do. Let's get started.
Yeah, let's jump right in.
Yeah. Do you have one that you're really interested in?
Well, the first one at the top is about spatchcocking or butterflying a whole chicken, and this is something I do all the time. I cook a whole chicken about once a week, primarily because they sell really good ones they sell really good whole chickens down the street at my local store, and they're cryovac. They're Bell and Evans, and they're cryovac, so they last for easily 5-6 days. So I can really work it into whenever it's convenient. And I love spatchcocking or cutting the backbone out because you can really brown the skin on one side, and then I flip it over and finish it in the oven. So this question is, I love making spatchcock chicken, but the high heat causes smoke. Help! I've been known to set off the fire, the smoke alarm.
Oh, haven't we all?
Sometimes, and especially if I'm doing something like this, I just preempt the whole thing and take it down for the hour. I open the back door and and I turn the fan on high. But my spatchcock chicken, what I like to do, it starts on the stovetop. So I put it in a 12-inch nonstick skillet, and I also have a cast iron that's enameled that also works well. And season with salt and pepper, whatever, and I cook it skin side down. And sometimes I put a heavy pot on it to really press it into the skillet to get it really crisp. And I can do that anywhere from 10 to 20 minutes, depending on how hot the skillet is, how dry the chicken is, until it gets gorgeous and browned. And then I flip it skin side up, and I finish it in the oven, a more moderate oven, say 400. So you get that crisp, high heat on the stovetop. You finish it in the oven, and that tends to not be as smoky.
Yeah, I think that's a really great solution because you're not in there that long. In my experience, whether you're roasting a turkey or a chicken or roasting steaks, if you're above 400 degrees, you're going to get some smoking as the fat splatters and hits the sides or the bottom of your oven, or even just making contact with your hot pan. So using a 400-degree oven or something a little bit lower will definitely reduce the amount of smoking that you get.
Yeah. You know what? We should totally, this is my paper umbrella idea. We should have a little air cleaner just for smoky kitchens with like a carbon filter. So it's like a booster for your hood. That would be amazing.
Or for people like me who live in apartments and have really terrible hoods that are attached to the bottoms of their microwaves.
Oh,
that's a great solution.
The last apartment I had before we moved into this house, there wasn't a fan. So the stove was next to the refrigerator, and on top of the refrigerator, I put a fan. I just kind of tilted it towards the window.
Yeah. That is a good solution. Although I have been known to remove batteries from smoke detectors pretty much as soon as I move into a place. It just, at least the one near the kitchen.
Yeah, at least the one near the kitchen. All right, any questions on here you want to answer?
Let's, as long as we're talking about pans and cast iron, what's your favorite way to season a cast iron skillet?
Ooh, this question I like because this is cast iron season, believe it or not. The sales of cast iron go through the roof every December and January. So if you have a new cast iron or you're just inspired to bring out your old cast iron, any old cast iron you can totally bring back to life as long as there's not a hole in it, basically. And so you want to scrub off all the rust, and if it's really trashed, put it through the clean cycle of your oven, and it'll bring it back to nothing. And then I use the flaxseed oil method. So you put it in a low skillet, you put the skillet in a 200-degree oven, and you put it there for, I think, like half an hour to an hour until it really heats up, and that opens up the pores. And then a little flaxseed oil, and I prefer flaxseed oil to any of the animal fats or the other vegetable oils because I think the coating stays around longer. It just is a little sturdier if you use flaxseed oil. And you can get flaxseed oil anywhere. And then I do the high heat method, bang it in upside down with the little flaxseed oil thing, 500 degrees for a good, hour or two, and then I repeat that. And then
Yeah.
I really only have to do that once or twice a year, to tell you the truth. Because the more
Yeah.
you cook in it, the more seasoned it gets.
Right.
How do
The
you
nice
do your
thing-
cast iron?
So one thing I am really careful about is the amount of oil I use. After you apply that coat of oil, if it looks shiny or it feels greasy, you've got way too much oil on there. Grab a paper towel and get rid of it. You almost don't want to feel the oil on there because you'll get a better, more even coating that way. And I actually use this method for carbon steel. I have a number of carbon steel pans that I adore.
Do you?
They're just
I'm not
the
on the carbon
tiniest.
steel train yet. I have one in the
I love
basement,
it.
but
Love it.
I know.
Get it out. Start refurbishing it. You can.
I think I should.
They're just, the pans are so beautiful, and the patina kind of develops as you cook with them. They're not perfect and uniform. Grace Young, who wrote The Breath of a Wok, talks about seasoning, and she describes that early phase where you're first starting to season your pan as kind of the wok's awkward teenage years. Carbon steel pans kind of go through the same thing where they're kind of little speckled, little mottled. Your skin
Good days and
tone
bad
is a little
days.
uneven, but over time it just all evens out, and it's just this gorgeous, gorgeous color. So totally worth the time and effort to do.
Yeah, I think I get stuck in those teenage years and I kind of give up.
Yeah, you just got to keep going,
Power
keep
through.
cooking with it.
All right. Here's another, I get this question all the time. It's about buttermilk.
Okay.
Creative and tasty ways to use leftover buttermilk. And I mean, there's so many recipes for buttermilk. I mean, you have pancakes, waffles, biscuits, cakes, cookies, coleslaw, panna cotta. Didn't you develop a buttermilk panna cotta recently?
I did. It's probably my favorite way to use buttermilk because it's luscious and it's creamy and you really taste the buttermilk. It's not just kind of there for a little pop of tang the way it is with biscuits. But yeah, I think dressings are really easy. You get this
ranch.
nice creamy richness without the fat because most buttermilk is non-fat.
Plus, you can freeze it. I mean, if you really have extra buttermilk and you just can't figure out what to do with it, you can freeze it in little ice cube trays, and then you can combine once they're frozen into a bag. And then to bring it back, if you leave it at room temperature, the buttermilk will look separated if you let it thaw.
Yeah,
But if you thaw it in the microwave and whisk it, it'll re-emulsify. And it doesn't have the same exact tangy flavor, but it's really close in most baked goods. So it's another way just to save it.
I've been seeing a lot of posts about buttermilk brining your poultry, and it looks really fascinating. You get really great browning because of those dairy proteins, and I'm actually looking forward to giving that a try.
Yeah, I remember I developed a recipe for Cooks Illustrated 15, 16 years ago, and I brined lamb in buttermilk for a shish kebab, and it was delicious.
Yeah. Oh, that sounds great.
Yeah, I could go
Is
for
that
that right
outdoors?
now.
Do I need a grill for that one?
Yeah, or your cast iron.
okay.
Just brown it. There you go.
Okay, yeah. We've already talked about how to prevent smoke alarms from going off, so I'm good to
Yeah,
go.
take it down.
Yeah.
This is a good question, Lan, and I actually don't have a great answer for this, so I'm eager to see if you do. How to extend the life of vegetables and fruits on the counter?
Whew. Let's see.
The one trick I do know, and is if you store things stem side down, like tomato stem side down, I know absolutely works, and because we've tested that in the test kitchen. Even though you really should store your tomatoes in the refrigerator and pull them out just when you need them, they actually taste just as good. We did a lot of testing on that recently, but I use that then for everything. My mother
Yeah.
stores apples on the counter, which I disagree. Apples should go in the fridge. It's like one day on the counter is like 2 weeks in the fridge for an apple, but
Yeah.
she doesn't like them cold. But store them stem side down. I kind of go with that rule. And keep the onions away, right?
My answer is don't store them on the counter unless you know you're going to use it right away. So much produce does better in cool, dark, dry places. So it doesn't have to be the fridge per se, but onions, potatoes, they do better when they're not in direct sunlight or even indirect sunlight. So I think that's my answer.
I like it. How do you prevent them from going bad on the counter? Don't store them on the counter.
Exactly.
Duh. Let's see. Oh, I like this question. It's about creaming butter and sugar. How long to cream butter and sugar for chocolate chip cookies? Well, the answer is depends how cold your butter is. If your butter is room temperature, and we did a ton of testing on this. If your butter is room temperature, which makes it really fast, especially if you have to do it by hand, heaven help you if you have to cream butter and sugar by hand. That can take 20 minutes with softened butter. But in a mixer, it really takes 3 to 5 minutes. But if your butter is cold, you can actually use cold butter, but you're going to have to increase that mixer time to 15 minutes until you see that color change in the butter and it gets really light and fluffy because it's building air in the butter. Those granules of sugar are, they're rough in the butter and they build air, and that's what gives the cookies lift. So that's the answer. 3 minutes if it's softened, or up to 15 minutes if it's straight from the fridge.
I have to say, it has just occurred to me, is this a trick question?
Yeah.
I know that I only ask because for our perfect chocolate chip cookies, and they're pretty great, you don't cream the butter and sugar. You want some of that sugar to dissolve to get a better texture and better flavor.
I just made these cookies yesterday.
Oh, yeah?
And they're so, well, you know what? I've gotten onto the cast iron cookie. So you make one big fat cookie and you cut wedges, because I love the extreme difference in texture between the edge and the center. I love that. So it's 12 tablespoons of butter in that cookie, and 9 of it you melt and you brown. And then the other 3 you add to the melted browned butter, so that it helps cool that butter down before you make the dough, but also you don't want to evaporate all the water in the butter, because that water is pretty crucial for the texture of the cookie. So yeah, it is kind of a trick question according to our recipes, but I kind of interpret it as cookies in general. Yeah,
and properly creaming your butter and sugar is so important, not just for cookies, but for cakes and other desserts too. So
yeah. All right.
Okay. All right, Julia, while we're on cookies, what is your favorite type of vanilla extract?
Oh, you know what? I am not one of those crazy vanilla people. And I say that because I'm not a crazy vanilla people. I know a lot of people who are really passionate about vanilla, passionate about a really pure flavor, and passionate about using real ingredients, not imitations or lab-made things. And so, and I usually am that way, but I'm also a total cheapskate, and I'm not a huge baker. So I'm really more of a meat and potatoes and cheese kind of person, not a sweets person. So I go for the imitation. Here, I'm sitting in my, I do have it right here. Ha! Baker's. This is our winner. It's imitation. It's really great flavor, I have to say. We did a lot of testing. This is the ATK winner. And the real versus imitation, in our taste test, people really couldn't tell the difference in baked goods like cookies and some cakes. Now, in custards, panna cotta, things where there's not a lot of other flavors, that's where the natural vanilla really came up. So for me, I'm totally fine with the imitation as long in bakers. Now, Lan, you're shaking your head like you're one of the vanilla purists.
No, I am totally with you. I was at those vanilla tastings. I went to a number of them, and my favorite was one of the losers.
Oh, really?
I loved it. It was not imitation. It was I think a Madagascar vanilla, but what I loved about it was it didn't taste like vanilla.
Oh, really? Are you not a vanilla fan?
I find it a little boring. Vanilla. I mean, but this one extract had all these other flavors going on. It was floral. It was kind of spicy. It had been extracted with alcohol, and so there was kind of a hint of booze to it. It was just, I found it so interesting. I couldn't stop eating that pudding.
Delicious.
Yeah, but it did not do well in that tasting. People were like, this does not taste like vanilla.
Oh, interesting. Yeah, so we're not. You and I are not into vanilla.
We are the wrong people to ask.
We're the wrong people to ask. Pie dough. All right, pie dough. Pie dough and pizza dough, right? Pizza dough, I never get around pizza. I have never gotten around to pizza, and I'm okay with the amoeba-shaped pizzas. It's just how I roll. Pie dough I usually can get pretty round because I use our foolproof all butter pie dough that Andrea Geary developed. I use that for everything. I actually use it for galettes. That is my all-time favorite dough. And that's really easy to roll out. But rolling out into a round is a problem for some people. How are you with rolling out pie doughs, Lan?
I'm pretty good, but I spent years working pastry prep, and so I got a lot of practice, and I think some of it is just practice. One thing I did learn is that you just have to rotate that dough really often and do your best to apply even pressure. And even when you do that properly, there's still going to be like little bulbous areas, and that's fine. Like most recipes will they sort of account for the fact that you're not going to get a perfect circle and that you're going to have to do some trimming after you press that dough into the plate. So I don't really stress it too much. It's fine. It'll still taste great.
Yeah, I know, right? If you're not a food stylist, why do you care?
Yeah. No, but even if you are a food stylist, a lot of them aren't like picture perfect.
Yeah, that's true. The one thing you said about rolling out pie dough, though, because I think it is what makes people a little nervous. Well, two things. This is my favorite rolling pin. It is not the winner.
Yes, mine too.
It's tapered on the ends. Mm-hmm. And I like that because if it's getting a little wonky on one side, I can kind of press the one side down versus the other side. So this is my favorite. It's a French rolling pin, French tapered rolling pin. And then the other thing, and you mentioned this, is rotating the dough. And I learned this very early on at America's Test Kitchen. So you put the piece of dough on a well-floured counter, and you put flour on the top, and then you roll it in. I roll it in one direction. I roll it towards me, and I turn it. I roll it towards me, and I turn it. And so that it just generally gets bigger. And that actually is kind of a foolproof way to roll out pie dough instead of going back and forth.
Yeah, I think there are other things you can do after you make the pie dough and you go to chill it. Take the time to shape it into a nice round disc so that you don't have to work as hard to like get rid of corners later. One other tip that's really useful is to take the time to make a nice flat disc after you've made your dough and you're going to refrigerate it. If you have a nice thin round disc, you don't have to roll as much to get to the correct diameter.
Good point.
All right,
here's
Julia.
one for...
Oh, no, you go. I'm so excited for some of these questions, but you go.
Oh, this one's for you.
Oh, boy.
Because I don't have an opinion on this one. I mean, I do, but my opinion is a non-opinion. Is there a right and wrong side to parchment paper?
No? Is this another trick question?
It is totally a trick question. I have some parchment paper here. It is not the winning parchment paper. It is simply what they sold at the store, and I was desperate. Is that side shinier? No. It might even be the losing parchment if I think about it. One side is a bit shinier, I believe, but it's bare. I don't notice a difference. And I always, because this is the loser, when you cut it, it curls, you can curl up. So my right side it curls down so it stays flat, basically.
Yeah. I think whatever side works for you is the right side.
I like that. All right. What you got?
Okay. Here's a question. I feel bad. This one's calling me out a little bit. If pasta is sold in 1 pound packages, why do most recipes use only 12 ounces? I'm sorry.
I hate recipes that use 12 ounces of pasta. I hate it. Do your recipes call for 12 ounces of pasta, Lan?
Not often, but every I can think of 2 off the top of my head where I don't use a full pound, and a full pound was too much pasta. That's pretty much it. I know that might be. I can already hear that there are people out there who are saying wrong, no such thing. But I don't know. I want a nice balance of sauce and veg and meat, so that's why I use 12.
Well, Italian pastas come in pound boxes, but all the other noodles really are all over the place. So there's that, first of all. And a lot of our pastas, if we cook them in the sauce, so it's a 1 pot or whatever, you oftentimes can't fit a pound in the pot. So we go for either 8 or 12 ounces. And I also remember being around the editorial table and having this huge discussion about how many people does a pound of pasta serve? And and everyone's like, well, is it dinner? Is it really a pasta course? No one eats pasta course here. Like if you're making spaghetti and meatballs, that's dinner. It's not your pasta course. But and most people said a pound of pasta really serves 4 to 6 people. Okay. So what if you don't want to serve 4 to 6 people? There's that. And then, right, you add all that other, if it's a pasta with a lot of vegetables and other things, then suddenly you're serving like 12 people. But then the question is, what do you do with the measly 4 ounces left in the box? And so I endlessly, here, let's see. Oh, yeah, here.
I love this field trip through your kitchen.
Yeah, oh, here we go. Here's like, yep, there's about 4 ounces left in there. I mean, that's so annoying. Yeah, I have some more back in there. Once in a while, when I get all these boxes, I just do, what's the word for it when all the different pasta shapes are mixed together? It has a name.
I don't know.
Yeah. And in some funny Italian brands, they actually sell it. It's called, I can't remember what it's called. But I just do one of those where it's all the odds and ends. And they all kind of cook at different times. So I stagger them into the boiling water as best I can. But
yeah. I mean, my feeling is if you're making kind of a soup type situation, or even something like pasta fagioli or pasta ceci, it doesn't really matter if your pasta is perfectly al dente. That stuff is better the next day when it's reheated, and then your pasta is going to be really tender. And in which case, I will use a mix of pasta in there. I'll break up noodles and just throw them in. It'd be great. It's a great usage of all those bits and bobs. Is that dinner tonight?
Oh, that is one of my all-time favorite recipes from CI. I remember I wasn't around for the development of it, and then Bridget made it for me on TV, and I could not stop eating. I was like, what is this bowl of magic?
It's so
did you develop that recipe?
Andrew Janjigian.
Andrew
although
Janjigian.
I just wrapped development on a recipe that's part of that family. Instead of chickpeas, though, I was working on pasta piselli, so it's pasta and peas. Same family, but green peas instead of chickpeas, and that recipe will come out
in the spring.
I can't remember. May, June. I think it's early summer, late spring.
Ooh, that sounds delicious.
It's pretty tasty and it's super easy.
All right, let's see. Why don't baking recipes call for oven to be set at convection versus regular? We get this question a lot, convection versus traditional. And the answer used to make sense, but now it doesn't make any sense. The answer used to be people don't have a convection. And that was true 15 years ago, 20 years ago. Convection wasn't something that most ovens had, so it felt like a setting that wasn't really representative of the home kitchens of the people whose recipes we were expecting to make at home. But nowadays, most ovens have that fan in the back. And so I think we should actually start putting a convection variation for people who want to use convection, or a convection note in the head, like don't use convection here.
Yeah. So because good news.
Sometimes it's good and sometimes it's bad.
Yeah, I actually spent maybe a month or so testing convection just to do a little primer on how to use it if you have that option. And what I learned is different ovens, the location of that fan and the speed of the fan kind of can affect things more than, sometimes it has a huge effect, other times it doesn't matter if you use convection or not. And it's certainly something we should consider. I'd be interested in spending more time with that. I think it'd be fun testing. On the other hand, I am testing at home right now, and I do not have a convection oven, so I'm very glad I don't have to. But yeah, I think if you have a convection oven and you want to use it, I would be conservative and drop the oven temperature slightly. The fan doesn't speed up cooking so much as it speeds up browning. It affects the surface of food. It doesn't really affect the interior. And so if you use a slightly lower oven temperature, you don't end up with kind of a burnt exterior and an undercooked interior. But as you learn your oven, you might find that it's not necessary to drop that oven temperature. It is pretty dependent on your oven and the recipe and where the food is in relation to the pan.
Yeah, I've been messing around with convection on my oven and for baking because I wanted a more even browning, and it totally works. But I really have to drop the oven temperature at least 25 degrees in order to maintain the same cooking time without it burning. And sometimes, and I also use it for when I do my spatchcock chicken because I love how it keeps that skin dry and crisp on the top. So yeah. So for some meats, especially if there's a skin, it's really good.
Mm-hmm. But if you're baking something that's like covered in foil, don't bother with the convection oven. It's not going to do anything.
Hey, Lan, what do you know about Wakame seaweed? I know I've bought it and used it in miso and some other soups, but I've never. The question is, how do you make Wakame seafood? Oh, Wakame seafood salad. Oh, I thought it said how do you make wakame, and I was like, I don't know.
I think you have to get your hands on fresh seaweed, which might be really tricky. I have seen.
Hello, internet.
Yeah, I've seen seaweed salads at some of the local Asian markets, and I know that a number of the chefs in the area can order it through their purveyors, but I've not seen seaweed at just the grocery store, and I'm not sure to be honest, I'm not sure if it's made with fresh seaweed or if it's reconstituted dried seaweed that's then dressed in kind of that sweet sesame flavored dressing. So
I thought it was dried and reconstituted. Yeah. But that would be a fun project, actually.
It would. I do love seaweed. It's so tasty.
It's being touted all over as sort of a super healthy thing to add to your diet. So that would be fun.
Oh.
We should do that for CI. You should do that for Cooks Illustrated.
I will throw that on the list of recipes I'd like to work on.
Here's one. Can you use an enamel cast iron pot on a glass cooktop? Do you have a glass cooktop, Lob?
Nope, I have a tiny gas burner. I would think so. I mean, I'm assuming that we're talking about an electric cooktop with a glass instead of induction, although
for me, I think this is about not induction but the glass surface and cast iron.
I mean, it's going to take a while to heat up, right?
You're able to. It will work. You can cook. However, most cast iron is going to scratch the heck out of that glass, so you can't really slide it around. You're going to make a mess. Also, the weight of it could really shatter the glass. So you have to be, if you're going to use something like that, a big heavy pot with a coarse bottom, you have to be very careful, and you can't slide it around. You always have to pick it up. So you can, but it sounds a little dicey to me.
Yeah, I'd be curious to know if the manufacturers have recommendations about the size and the material for their cooktops. I imagine they would, and if so, you should do what your manufacturer says.
Glove save there, Lon. Glove save. I have one for you, Lon.
Okay.
It's about cooking meat. And this question, of course, whenever we cook meat, I love being in my kitchen because I can just pull things out. Here is the best way to cook meat. And of course, the question is, what if you don't have one of these? Ta-da! Instaread thermometer. This thing is, this is what separates novice and intermediate cooks from really good home cooks, is a temperature to help you gauge when things are done, from meats to poultry to cakes to bread and so on. But the question is, if you don't have one of these, what is the best way to temp red meat?
Red meat. All right, so I'm going to assume we're talking steaks and instead of something where you want it to be pull apart tender. I would grab a paring knife and just cut a little slit in there and have it look. I don't see...
nick and peek, I call it.
Yeah, there's no reason to play guessing games. They'll if you, with enough experience, you can actually poke at the meat and you can tell if it's rare or medium. I don't know that you can tell.
Yeah, the poking takes some experience. But if you think about it, if you start poking at the edge of the meat, like the edge of the steak, that edge is going to be cooked through, right? Poke there and then compare that to, slowly work your way in to the center of the meat. And then you can tell the difference between the edge of the center. And that will help you learn the poking thing. But, the poking thing, you have to cook a lot of steaks to really know what you're doing.
Right. And you have to do them over and over and cut into them and check to learn, all right, I thought it was this, I cut it open, and I see that it is in fact this.
Yeah.
You can kind of make adjustments as you keep cooking them. One other trick that line cooks use quite a bit is to use a cake tester. The really, those metal cake testers with the really fine tip, you can kind of poke the meat with the cake tester, leave that tester in there for about 2-3 seconds, and whatever temperature the interior of the steak is, that'll be the temperature of the cake tester, of the bit of metal. And so you can get an idea of how hot it is inside. Again, this is one of those things where, if you're a professional cook and you're doing this day in and day out, it's pretty easy, and you can get pretty, the people who do this a lot are pretty great at guessing the temperature, and they can get you a medium instead of a medium well, just on temperature and touch alone. But unless you've got a ton of time or money, you can't. It's not really a great way to test without practice.
Well, and growing up, we used to do that. It was a little cake tester, and you put it in the center of the meat or the baked good, and then you used to put it on your lip.
Yeah.
And it was your lip that was super sensitive, and you could be like, oh, that's really hot, oh, that's kind of cold, and obviously that's really unsanitary. That was the 70s. But it was for home cooking. It wasn't in a restaurant, obviously. Yeah. But that was how I was taught to do that. So old school.
I mean, I keep a cake tester in my kitchen, and it's a little bit easier for me to just grab that and use it. But then, I've had a lot of practice, and if I'm cooking for me, and so I'm fine with my mistakes. I think if I were cooking for other people, I would definitely go dig out the instant read thermometer.
Yeah, I always dig out the instant read thermometer. I mean, it's just always right. My kitchen's tiny, so everything's 2 steps away. But I pull it out all the time.
Okay.
I think I had undercooked a chicken once. Ooh. And it's never been forgotten. I mean, it was years ago. It was just for the family meal, right? It was just for here. It was like my family. This kitchen has a restaurant name. This is Chez Moi. So the chef at Chez Moi undercooked the chicken, and constant ribbing. But I didn't set the smoke alarm off, so
Yeah, you win some, you lose some.
It's true.
One more meat cookery question for you. Julia, how do you cook a pork shoulder? How long do you cook it? Do you have a favorite recipe, a favorite technique?
Yes. So I make this about twice a year, and it's a holiday thing for my extended family, my in-laws, when they come over. And Brian Roof developed this recipe way back when for Cooks Illustrated. It's a roasted pork shoulder with a peach sauce, and it's a peach mustard sauce. It brings the house down every time. Now you have to get a skin-on bone-in pork shoulder, so you kind of got to order that ahead. But it's not a fancy or expensive piece of meat, so it surprisingly feeds a lot of people. It doesn't cost a lot of money. And you score the outside, and you salt it and sugar it, and then you get all those chicharron, those on the outside from the roasting. So good. But it's bone-in, so it takes a while. After you salt it and sugar it overnight, it's $3.25, and it's a good 3 to 5 hours in the oven, and then you gotta let it rest for a good hour until you can just slide the bone out. Though. Yeah, and it temp out like around 190 or so. 190. So you really, it's like dark meat. You really take it all the way, and it's sliceable, but just barely. Oh, right. Hands down. It takes all day, but so worth it.
You made such a good point. If you are cooking something like a pork shoulder or a Boston butt, there's no real point to cooking to a specific temperature, because getting it to 160, which makes it food safe, isn't good enough. It's still going to be so tough and chewy. You really have to like let it go for longer. And even when it gets to like 180, it's still not there. It has to hang at 180 for hours before it becomes tender. And so, you know, there are a number of recipes we put together and write where we don't give a temperature, and it's because there's no point. It's you have to get it hot and it has to stay there for hours. Now, on the other hand, if you're cooking, say, a pork loin roast or a pork chop, 140. You stop at 140.
Yeah.
Otherwise, it'll be dry and kind of sad and stringy.
It'd be very sad. Yeah, but pork shoulder, I mean, it's one of those few roasts that you can throw it in the oven and just forget it. It doesn't need a lot of fussing, a lot of messing around. You don't need to brown it and temp it. You kind of throw it in, leave it there for a handful of hours, and you're going to have an amazing dinner. So I really appreciate those, like, leave it and forget it kind of roasts.
Yeah, they're just so much more convenient because you can pull them out and they can hang out for a while and still stay hot and in fact benefit from hanging out. They're so great.
Well, I think, Lan, that's it for us. We're out of time.
Oh, wow. That was fast.
Yeah, it went fast. It was nice to see you, Lan.
It's great to see you. And this was so much fun. Thanks to everyone for watching.
And for more recipes and cooking tips, be sure to head over to americastestkitchen.com. Thanks, and see you later.
Bye, everyone.